I know it's boring. Another LDBC led discussion and video, but this cancer is spreading, and it's annoying me enough where sometimes I feel like I just have to put my sort of take out there, and hopefully more people agree than disagree. But obviously, ultimately, you're entitled to your own sort of opinion. But what sort of led me to get to that point where I thought I had to comment on it. I mean, anywhere you look now, any boxing channel, go into the comments, you're gonna have the UK versus US comments, and that's mainly led from the whole Joshua Wilder debacle. So you got that leading the charge with the LDBC spreading their bullshit, and obviously you got some idiotic UK fans as well, but there isn't a movement behind it. It's just an individual, more often than not, commenting on what someone has said, and then it blows up into 100 comments. But so one of the things that sort of really annoyed me was off the back of the news of Joshua signing with Matchroom for a further 3 years is a few people jumping in with their comments, chiming in, saying, "Oh, Joshua's a slave." And that really sort of resonated with me because I'm thinking, hold on, you're American, right? Don't you know what the definition of a slave is? Now, correct me if I'm wrong, but my definition of a slave is, you know, someone being forced to work for free in atrocious conditions against their will. I think that kind of sums up a slave, you know, relatively simply, right? Now, I've never heard in the history of slavism, if that's even such a word, of a slave master paying their slave or or even making less than what their slave is. That doesn't make sense to me. So what you're trying to say is Hearn is making more money than Joshua. Now you all know that's fucking ridiculous. So let's cut out that bullshit. What is Hearn's job? Hearn is a promoter, right? So in that title describes what he has to do: promote. His job, I will just use Joshua in this instance. I know he's got a whole stable, but let's just use Joshua because it's just tidier that way. His job is to make Joshua the best possible deal he can at every opportunity. Again, if you disagree with that, please let me know and tell me what you feel the definition of it. But from my understanding, that is his job. His job is to make the best possible deal, and in terms of boxing, that's the best fight with the best money, with the best terms. He doesn't owe Wilder fans or America when it comes to just these two fights. He doesn't owe them shit. His job isn't to give Joshua a deal that also makes Wilder feel good about it. Now, obviously, he wants to incentivize Wilder, so he's got to pay him more than $1, right? Because why else would he fight him? So, of course, there's got to be an element of give or take. But his job is always going to be to get the best deal for Joshua. Now, in the position Joshua is in now, that'll almost always mean that he will make the most money when it comes to that. Now, later on in his career, he may not be on top of the tree. He might have to accept that the best deal for Joshua isn't the bigger slice of the pot. He might have to accept that he has to take less because he's let's say fast forward from 10 years from now, he's I don't know 38, 39. He doesn't hold any belts. He's got a few losses on him, and then he wants to fight this young up and coming champion. Yeah, he might have to accept that he's no longer the shot caller in that instance. He can't say I'm going to take 50 mil up front and then half the pot. He can't do that now. So the best deal doesn't necessarily mean the most in terms of money, but it's what works, what is good for them with what they have on offer at that time. What is the best deal that he can make for them? And I think he's been able to do that up to date. Hence the reason why Joshua's staying on with him. Joshua doesn't need Hearn anymore. Joshua is a global star. He could probably manage himself. He's got his own promotion company. He could probably do that himself. He could fill venues. He could pick up the phone to Sky and say, I want to sign with you as an independent. They'll probably jump all over that. Or any other broadcasting network for that matter. It doesn't even have to be Sky. He can go elsewhere. So he doesn't necessarily need her, but he probably appreciates the good job that he's done for him. And that frees him up to concentrate on his boxing and other things that he might want to do in his life. On the flip side, and we'll use Wilder as an example because it's just simpler to do it that way. I think Wilder's been poorly managed. He's been fighting for 10 years. He's been champion for, I don't know, 4, maybe 5 years. And he's still at this point now where he's not making anywhere near the money that Joshua has been making. And the truth of the matter is that the LDBC and Wilder need Joshua more than he needs them. Come at me if I'm wrong. Wilder has not been relevant until Joshua started picking up a bit of steam and picked up a few belts. He did it sooner than they probably anticipated. When Joshua first came on the scene, 4 or 5 fights in, Wilder was probably thinking, okay, there's this young buck coming up. I've got to keep my eye out for him. I'll probably face him a good few years down the line. Little did he know that this kid was going to pick up a title, 17, 18 fights in, and then several more thereafter, putting Wilder under a lot of pressure because it makes Wilder look bad. And here's the thing is they don't want to accept it. It makes him look bad. How you be fighting for close to 10 years and only now have you started to buck up and start pulling your finger out to actually do shit. If Joshua didn't have these titles up until now, he still would not have unified. He felt no urgency. And here's the problem. That's why he's looking stupid and embarrassed, because Joshua's done things at such a rate that those who have not got rose tinted glasses have to be asking the hard questions to Wilder's management team and saying, how could we have allowed this to happen? How? How has this happened? How has the American WBC champion of the world not put himself in a position where he is numero uno? And that's what irks these people. That's what's fed this cancer in the LDBC. They just can't accept that the status quo is not what it was. You get all these people jumping on, saying, oh, and he has got to come to Vegas, he's got to do that. Why? Why does he need to do that? Joshua has built up a fan base from his very first fight. The British public was on his side. You can't say the same for Wilder. He's only become relevant now in the last few years. People have probably never seen a Wilder fight. All these Wildettes and the LDBC followers have probably never seen a Wilder fight up until 4 or 5 fights ago. Definitely not before he won his title, for sure. No one knew who this guy was. Even till this day, he's still a relatively unknown. And that's where the jealousy comes from. They're jealous of the fact that Joshua's doing it at a rapid rate, which makes them look bad. These people were not supporting Wilder prior to Joshua coming onto the scene. So they built up Joshua to be this guy who they call him a coward for starters. I don't know how a paper champion. Now he didn't do what Fury did, and I'm not belittling what Fury did in terms of being Klitschko in his backyard, because that was a hard job and he did well. But he beat one guy who had a bad night, in my opinion, for one reason or another, to collect all of 3 or 4 belts. Well, 3 of the 4 anyway. He beat one guy. Joshua beat 3 guys for his 3 belts. Well, he got the 4, but we'll say 3 of the main 4. He beat 3 guys for that. One of them being the guy that Fury beat to collect those belts. How did Wilder get his belt? This is a common argument that I have. Again, in the conversation, they'll say, "Oh, well, Joshua's a paper champion, and he didn't deserve it, and he didn't. These are Fury's belts." I'm like, so how did Wilder get his belt? He waited for Vitali to retire to free up his belts, and even then, he didn't go for it when it was vacated. He had to wait for somebody else to step up in Stavern and Ariola to then jump on that. I had an argument with someone in the comment section who said, "Oh, Stavern was a great champion. He was undefeated and he defended multiple times." And I had to tell him, actually, no, Stavern had lost before and he had never defended it. You know, he lost on his first defense, and then, and he swiftly fucked off. Didn't hear from him again. But the funny thing is, I went onto another boxing channel and he was on there effectively starting the same argument again on another channel, even though I had debunked his earlier claim. So he's not interested in the facts. He's interested in pushing a narrative. And this is where the LDBC is bad for boxing because it's effectively a cult. And you've got these idiots who have just jumped onto the boxing scene lately. They're really sort of WWE fans because they just like the drama. They like the promos and the screaming and shouting and wanting to come into a ring. Oh, Joshua banned him. I'm like, the fuck? What the hell has that got to do with making a fight? Nothing. Joshua's been consistent with that. He only let Klitschko into the ring if he won his fight. I think it was against Brazil. I can't remember exactly what it was. That fight had been signed depending on whether or not he won that night to then go on to make that unification. White was free to come over and do his work for Sky Sports, I think it was. But he was like, this is mine and Parker's night. It's got nothing to do with you. Until you've indicated that you're serious about actually having this fight on, I'm not going to self-promote you. And, you know, they want to argue that Wilder is well known globally and, you know, he's famous and this and that. If that was the case, why is he not making the money that Joshua's making? Because you're not going to his fights. You're not buying his pay-per-views, mainly because he's not a pay-per-view. But that is because Showtime, who air his fights, I think it is, they would have done their research and said to themselves, is there a way we can get away with making this a pay-per-view? Let's find out who knows this guy and are they prepared to do that? And obviously the data came back and it was like, nah, no one will be interested in buying these fights because the demand isn't there. They don't know who this guy is. But the difference between the British and the UK fans when it comes to supporting their fighter is from the very beginning, when Joshua came on the scene, when he won his gold medal, we was waiting in anticipation for him to turn pro. There was a few of the medalists during that 2012 Olympics had turned pro. They were, had impressive debuts, were ticking along well. We was waiting for Joshua because it's been a while since we had a legitimate heavyweight British champion. I think the last one was probably Lewis. That's some time ago, and everyone was waiting of someone of Lewis's stature to emerge, and we were all hoping that Joshua was going to be that guy. And obviously, up till now, he's proven to be. That's proven to be the case. But that wasn't a given at the very beginning. But we were there, supportive of him. Can't say the same for Wilder. He was fighting in school gym halls and car parks in 6 rounders against blown up cruiserweights in the early parts of his career. And that's fine. You've got to start somewhere, right? But they're making out that they were following this guy from the very beginning when they weren't. They were only interested in him when Joshua emerged. And it all came from the fact that he did it at such a rate, it was making them look bad. It was making Wilder's management and promotion team look bad. Because they were probably feeding Wilder all sorts of line about how it's got to take a bit of time. These things can't be done overnight. And literally overnight, Joshua's emerged from nowhere. And nothing was a given. Nothing was handed to him. He forced the issues. Just before he fought Martin, people talking about, oh, are you going to challenge for a world title fight? He's thinking, it's probably a bit soon. But obviously Martin came up, definitely the weaker of all the champions at the time. Oh, sorry, I think the rest were maybe vacated at the time. But anyway, Martin picked up the IBF and he went for it. He said, I'm going to go for it. They fucking paid him a shitload of money, like 5 mil. He's never going to see that sort of level of money again, most likely. And he took a risk and he went for it. He wasn't interested in padding out his record with another 4 or 5 meaningless fights where he just blows through people in the first 2 rounds. He's like, right, now it's business time. I've identified a weak link. he has something that I want, and this could be a foothold in me going on and doing bigger and better things. Wilder should have been all over Martin in terms of making that fight. That's an easy belt for him to pick up. You know, he should have made that. They got the same management team apparently. That should have been a given. But Joshua and his team have got money to throw around, you know. But why? Because they trust and believe in him enough to pay a little bit over the odds because ultimately they'll reap the rewards, which again has found it to be just been true. You know, that 5 million now looks like small change that they gave Martin. You know, it's small change. It was worth it, every penny now, because he's now gone on and collected another 2 belts and he's one away from completing the set. You know, raking in 20 to 30 mil reportedly per fight. Whereas Wilder makes 10% of that, not even. And you're talking about he makes 2 million a fight. He made 2 million in his last fight. That's his highest payday. And you know how much Ortiz got? Ortiz got about 500,000. And why did Ortiz get only 500,000? Well, mainly because he was a challenger, but he isn't that big a name in terms of generating revenue. And that's just it. He's not. He doesn't speak English, and he doesn't have the resume. Take Jennings off there, who's semi decent. There isn't really anything there to excite you. Not enough to warrant a pay-per-view and to get 90,000 people into a stadium to come and watch it. That's a big answer, but they don't want to look at the facts. So the UK fans, we stick behind our fighters. If Joshua was to lose, let's say he was to lose against Wilder in the next fight, the fans are not going to just disappear. Of course, there'll be a small percentage who fuck off because they're fickle like that. But the vast majority of the British public will stick behind him, especially if there's a rematch, which they will almost certainly will be. They would get behind him and they'll fill another 90,000 and they'll buy the pay-per-views. I can't say the same for Wilder. I think he's so gripped with fear of losing that once he does and he gets exposed, then they're gone. That includes, the hardcore LDBC followers. I think they fuck off. If Wilder loses in an emphatic manner, let's say he faces Joshua and he blows him away in 2-3 rounds, and he makes him look bad, they're gone. They'll jump onto someone else. They'll find another one. They'll find Spence or Crawford or the Charlos. That will be their main focus, their main push. And I think that's the fear that's gripping Wilder, which is the reason why he doesn't want to risk the belt. He doesn't. He says all the right things. He's been saying for years that he owes his fans a unification. Didn't do it. He offered Parker reportedly about £500,000 to unify, and then Parker went on to fight Joshua for about eight million pounds. How do you compete with that? So you got people running around saying, "Oh, Wilder doesn't," everyone's scared to fight him. Look at this scenario, and what would you do? You'd be honest with it. If you're number one in all the sanctioning bodies, and you're now mandatory, and you can pick out Wilder and Joshua, what do you go with? So scenario one, you face Wilder in Alabama in some half-filled arena, and you make £500,000. That's the most anybody has made fighting Wilder. So we go by their last fights because it's easier. It'll be on Showtime. 1 million people would watch it, and you'll probably get knocked out. But you got £500,000, but you got knocked out. Or you take option two. You face Anthony Joshua. He's got 3 belts out of the 4. You're gonna get at least what Martin got. Well, yeah, but you're gonna get several million. Let's start off with Martin as a benchmark now, because everyone's gonna use that as a benchmark. So let's say you get 5 million. You get an opportunity to challenge for 3 belts. You're on a pay-per-view. probably on a with a decent undercard, beamed globally around the world in front of 90 or 1,000 fans with a chance to obviously cause an upset. And you know what? You probably get knocked out, but you're £5 million better off, right? So, what option do you go with? It's just simple maths. The maths say you go with Joshua. Not only is he dangling more belts in front of you, you're going to make 10 times the amount, win or lose. So, nobody's ducking Wilder. It's just from a financial aspect, it just doesn't make sense pursuing him when everybody's queuing out for their AJ money. Now, obviously, I want to see this fight happen. Hopefully, Joshua gets through the Povetkin fight because that's going to be a very tough fight. And I don't want Wilder to lose before those two face because that will take the shine of any fight. I want Wilder, unless he fights White, because I would like White to beat him, just because obviously White's represented. But if he fought, I don't know, let's say he does fight Brazil, which is rumored to be fighting. I hope Brazil gives him a tough fight, but ultimately I'd want Wilder to win because I want to see that Joshua Wilder fight happen. I don't want it to to be broken up because of a Hail Mary overhand right from Brazil or Povetkin, whoever it is that loses, and that just all these years of building up in anticipation just diminishes like that. I hope that isn't the case. But just to sort of summarize, it shouldn't be about the UK versus the US. I think we're both fans of boxing. The UK element has obviously builded. I think the Americans are finding it very difficult to accept that it's not necessarily the epicenter now, especially with the heavyweight division. It's not necessarily the epicenter in terms of we're having to go. We don't have to go to Vegas, and I understand where Joshua's coming from. This goes back to the point where I was talking about how the fans supported from the very beginning. Just as you made it, just as you're about to make history in terms of competing for all four of the belts to be undisputed, you then fuck off to Las Vegas. It's not cheap to go to Las Vegas. It's going to cost the average guy a couple of £1,000, flights, hotel, spending money, whatever, renting a car, whatever it may be. It may cost a couple of £1,000 to go out there and do that. And obviously, if it's fight week, those numbers are going to go up in terms of hotels and flights and what have you. So it's a big answer, and taking time off work and doing it. It's a big answer to answer your fan base just as you're about to create history to say, "Fuck you, lot, going to Vegas. The money's there." I don't think that's necessarily fair, and I can see where it's coming from because it's really important to him that he actually keeps that following, that support. Because if he does ever slip up, which could happen in his next fight, he knows that, okay, I made a mistake. I'll go back to the drawing board and we start again. That fan base will still be there. And I can't say the same for Wilder. I honestly believe if he does loses, then that's probably the end of him in terms of the hardcore following that he does have. There'll be people who still will follow him because they were there from the very beginning, and credit to them. But the ones who are about the drama and the hyping, they're gonna fuck off. That he's dead to them then, and they'll jump onto, like I said, a Charlo or Spence or Crawford or someone else.